The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Business Channel. For more information about our network and to check our additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericabusiness.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Welcome to Strategies for Financial Survival with Michael Figueroa. When financial adversity hits, and it very well may hit you, it's those that educate themselves and use their skills that will survive, no matter what field you're in. Now, here's your host, Michael Figueroa.
Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Today, we have a very interesting person that I'm going to be interviewing. He's been my business partner for almost 20 years and started out back when he was 24. And so what we're going to talk about is basically how to get started and some of the trials and tribulations that we've been through so that you have a good idea that if you're going to start out in this field or pretty much in any field, how you have to look at it and how you perceive what you're going through. So today my guest speaker is Jeff Uch. And Jeff, what I'd like
to be here, Mike. Thanks for your...
give a little bit of your background, and then we'll go into the details of the show. So go ahead, Jeffer.
Background, well, my degree's in engineering, graduated from the University of Arizona back in the early 90s, and had a plan of either going into the military with that degree and becoming a pilot, or getting in working with one of the number of defense contractors around the country. But instead, I also swam for the University of Arizona and decided to continue swimming and training to try to achieve my goals there. And so interestingly enough, I ended up doing real estate part-time. I was still training, and so I became very interested in real estate. And so that's been the majority of my career in real estate and putting together deals, anywhere from small, little lot deals to single-family homes up to very large multi-million-dollar development deals.
Now, of course, this didn't all happen immediately. It was over this whole 20-year period. And what a lot of people are going to be interested in is, as I would be if I was listening, how did this happen? How did you get started? What was the trigger? If I remember right, at the time you were a life insurance agent, and you went to a tax seminar, and that's when we met. And so give a little bit background on that section and what triggered you to say, oh, real estate, that's interesting. Maybe I ought to do that. And then what we talked about and how this started to roll.
Well, I think with any entrepreneur, which is what I became, I didn't set off to do that. That's what I became. And I was selling life insurance as a way to provide means for my family. I hadn't had any kids yet, but I was married. And so you're right, I was doing that, and I was doing just about anything else I could, legally and morally, to earn a living. And but as, anyone that has the entrepreneurial spirit is kind of looking at all times of ways to better themselves. And, to our audience, I think it could be conveyed that not just monetarily, but in all aspects of our lives. So there was this seminar that was given that I saw in the newspaper. It was a tax lien seminar, and I just said, it'd be interesting to go check that out. And so I went because I was motivated to learn and just explore different areas, and found that very interesting. And that is where I met you, Mike. and another one of your good partners of many years, Alan. And we had a good talk after that meeting. And so I became very interested in what you had to teach and learn and grow from your experiences. And that's kind of how the journey began.
So, of course, we started that. And then I remember, like I did with most people, I said, well, if I remember right, Jeff, you had said, I'd like to invest with you on some things. And how do I do that? And I asked you how much money you had. And you said, well.
Your eyes were gleaming.
And I said, and you said, well, I can borrow $2,000 on my credit card. And I remember saying to you, well, that's not going to get you anywhere. You know what you really need to do is you need to use your brain. You need to use your ability to think and work, and you're going to make money based on that capability, not on your cash. And I think I told you, I said, call me sometime and we'll go from there. And I remember with a lot of people get interested in doing house fix and flipping and trustee sales, and then they hope that they can collect money just by picking fruit off the tree, and oh yes, here's 10,000, that's a freebie, and here's 5, and that's a freebie, and very few ever want to really work. And I remember sometime about 3 weeks later, you actually did call, and we got together, and then I started to talk to you about, well, if you're going to do this, this is what you got to do. So tell some of the listeners, in your words, what we did, and again, what made you move forward with this? What triggered, this is going to work, I'm going to do something, and this is what you started to do?
Well, first of all, I go back to always be curious, always be looking for ways to better oneself. And so that's what I was doing at the time, young and ambitious and looking for ways to better myself. And then meeting you, Mike, back then at that tax lien seminar piqued my curiosity into that, going in that direction of real estate. And then following up, if you have doors that open to you, look through them. It doesn't mean that you're committing to something for the rest of your life, but, go in and explore and find out if you like it or not, or what the opportunity may be there. And so that's what I did. I followed up with you, called you a few weeks later to see what kind of opportunities and if there could be a win-win created between us working together. And there happened to, it happened to work out. And there's other doors that I explored also. I tried to get in business in Las Vegas, selling some Visa MasterCard things. I was a salesman for Visa MasterCard, the early, remote access to Visa MasterCard when cell phones just came out, and they were just atrocious things. Today, it's everybody can have them, but back then, it was just an incredible thing, and I went through that door and explored, and that ended up not working out. But you need to go and kind of search and find out, what you like. I go back to the Covey thing that he teaches: draw 3 circles, find out what you like, and then draw a circle of what you're good at, and then draw another circle of what you can make money doing, and where you find the intersection of those 3 is really something that you could really be successful at. And it doesn't mean it's just one thing, but if you can find one or more things that do intersect, when you find that intersection, then that's a door to go through and really work on. So I did follow up with you, and we met, and you kind of gave me some broad instructions and directions of if I wanted to get into real estate and do what you did, which at the time was distressed properties, and also it was the end of the RTC days. You kind of showed me, okay, this is how you find things. So that's what I started to do. Just kind of not knowing any better, I went out there and looked through the newspaper and went around in neighborhoods looking for dilapidated properties and following up with them. And in those days, we did not have the internet or the computers that you could research. So I'd have to go downtown and and search through the documents and try to ascertain who the owners were and what kind of liens were on them and if they could be deals. And so it was kind of a different process than it is today. And so through that, we ended up finding our first couple deals together.
Now, I remember that you came to me one day and said, here's a couple of properties, and one in particular was in the paper, and it said something like foreclosure pending.
Right.
And I researched that property, looked at it, and if I remember right, it was a property that was out by Wilmont and 22nd Street. It was worth probably about $60,000 maybe. It had 3 mortgages on it, and the owners they're just going to walk from it and go away. And I remember I drafted contracts and I gave them to you, and I said, go, get these signed, meet these people. And one day you came back and everything was signed, and I remember you didn't really understand what was going on, I think, at the time of what the legal papers were. But what we did was we bought the property by buying the underlying liens at discounts, so that, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but instead of paying, let's say, $60,000, which was the combined debt that was on the property, we bought it for maybe about $30,000 and cleaned it up.
I remember the details because that was my first big deal. And basically, the first lien was in foreclosure, and the first lien had a balance of about $40,000. And there were 2 junior liens. There was one junior for another 20 and a third for another 20, roughly. And so you got me the contracts you're referring to are basically an assignment of their deed of trust over to us. And right. These 2 people happen to be local people, one down in Green Valley and one in Tucson. And so I went to them and said, well, you've either got to protect your position, or you're going to get wiped out by the trustee sale, or you can sell to us. And so they sold to us at significant discounts. And then we were able to, in effect, go to the trustee sale and buy it because, we had...
No one could bid against us.
Because we could just bid up to what was owed. And we ended up getting the property that way and then flipping it very quickly after. It was in like 45 days that we flipped it and made a nice profit. And, of course, my wife at the time, the biggest check I had up until that time was $320 from selling insurance and Visa MasterCard. And when we sold that property and then we split the profits and we took carried back and then you cashed me out of that, my wife was very she was cautious until the check cleared.
And tell her how much was the initial check?
The initial check was $5,000. That deal. But for our listeners to hear, that doesn't happen, to everybody. I got very, there was some luck involved for sure. There was also, I was out there looking too. I went out there and did, but I didn't know any better. So, I had the beginner's mind. And the beginner's mind I define as you don't know what you just did you weren't supposed to do. Are you?
That's so true. Hold on, Jeff.
Yes,
it looks like I'm being signaled that we have a commercial break we have to go to, but let's pick up as soon as we get back on that, because that's something I think is very important for our listeners to understand what that means so that they're encouraged to go out and try to do things versus feeling that their life is a disaster or they can't get out of a mess. So I'm going to allow for a break here, and we'll be back in a minute.
We're always talking business. Talk to an expert. Call now toll free 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Voice America Business Network.
At Intuitive Strategies, LLC, we provide services to our clients that help them develop a strong education in business. And we also help them to develop a strategy that will allow them to turn their skills into a profit, protect their business and personal assets, and plan for a successful retirement. Our consulting and structuring services include business analysis, budget analysis, management analysis, ability to raise capital from investors, tax planning to minimize tax liability under code, as well as legal structure to protect business from frivolous lawsuits. Intuitive Strategies also provides document preparation services, such as business structuring documents, documents that establish an entity, management agreements, retirement plans, estate planning, wills, and trusts. Let Intuitive Strategies help you with your business. Visit intuitivestartup.com or call us in Tucson at 520-425-8759. Visit intuitivestartup.com today. When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network. You are listening to Strategies for Financial Survival with your host, Michael Figueroa. If you have a question or comment about the program, please send us an email to support@intuitivestartup.com. That's support@intuitivestartup.com. Now, back to Strategies for Financial Survival.
Welcome back, everyone, and we are talking to Jeff Utsch, and we last left off where he was explaining how we did our first deal together. And the key phrase there was how to understand that you're going to try to do what you may not be able to do, but because you don't have any prejudice against what you're not able to do, you do it. So I remember we've had a number of conversations about that. Jeff, tell people what your thoughts are that you've learned over the years about that whole concept of trying things that almost everyone say, that's impossible. And you might be able to, if you remember, to tell people about the one transaction we did on that property on Sundance where I told you it was impossible and going to the sale was a waste of time and what actually happened.
Well, I found over time there's a balance. You know, if you're too over exuberant and you chase after everything and go into every door that comes your way, you are going to waste a lot of time. And I have been guilty of that. I've been too naive, optimistic, and thinking things would work out. And sometimes they don't, and so you have to be careful. But I like one of my favorite quotes ever is from Henry Ford. And he said, if you think you can't, you're right. And so if you think there's no hope and you're told there's no way and it's impossible for you to do anything, then you're right, because you won't have the faith or the energy to get up and go do it. Now, on the other side of things, if you think you can do everything, you're going to find out that, you're going to get beat up. Now, the middle ground to find is, and I think it comes with experience, is to try to understand there's risks. Baseball players, when they get up to bat, know they're not going to hit the ball every time. Yet they still get up there and try. And, if they're hitting a third, 33% of the time, they're doing great. We try to do better than that in business, obviously. So I think there's a middle ground. But you've got to have enough faith and confidence in your own ability and the ability for you to get out there and do something to go do it. But at the same time, you want to be cautious of what you get yourself into. So back then, I thought everything would work and had the beginner's mind. And there's a lot of power in the beginner's mind. And it's something I think I would rather err towards having the beginner's mind and being too enthusiastic and optimistic than the other way, because you can accomplish more. There's also more risk, there's more disappointment, and there's more heartache doing it that way. But there's also greater reward, more opportunity, and higher heights to climb. And so, Thomas Edison's another example to use. All he had to do was succeed one time to get the right filament in the light bulb. And how many times did he fail? Well, thousands and thousands of times. So anyway, going out and looking at these houses, most of the houses that I brought didn't work. But you don't need that many good ones to really make it worth your while. And you brought up that the Sundance property, that was a foreclosure house that we bought. But the opening bid on that was, somewhere around $58,000, and that was a $200,000+ house here in Tucson. And so when I called you on that, we had done the title search. And again, back in these days, guys, it wasn't as easy today to get information on properties. I mean, you had to microfilm, microfiche it. The research through the title companies took a lot longer, so it was a little more difficult than it is today. But anyway, we did the research, and I called you about it very excitedly. And then what happened, Mikey?
I said, those facts, let's see, there's a first of 58, there's a second of, I think, another 50, and it's worth 200-ish. So, that's not going to go to sale. That's going to be redeemed, postponed, bankrupted. It's just not going to happen. And you said, well, look, just come to the sale and don't be so pessimistic about it. I said, okay, it's a waste of time, but I'll do it for you. And we went down there, and nobody showed up except Trustee.
That's right.
And when we bid, I think it was $10 or $100 over the minimum bid, and we got the winning bid. I said, I can't believe this. This is a miracle. Something's wrong. And
it's like that happens. So just showing up is a big part of the battle. Just constantly showing up, because every so often, I'm a hunter. And it's amazing to me that the more time a hunter spends in the field or the woods, the luckier he gets. And again, you can say lucky, but it's not really luck. It's because you're there. If you're there, most of the days you're out hunting, you're not going to see or get anything. But the hunters who are the trophy hunters are the ones that are always successful are the ones who spend time in the field and prepare for what they're doing. And the same could be said for real estate. You can be successful part-time. You can have success just nitpicking here and there, as long as you are consistently doing it. So if you're going to dedicate an hour a day, or if you're going to do it full-time, the point is, I remember, Mike, and there was a 6-month period in 1997 that I almost got out of the business because I didn't make $1 for 6 months. And we had a dinner with one of our good friends, and we were discussing, what our options were. But of course, very soon after that, we had a couple big hits. That was enough to carry us, for the whole year type hits. So these things are up and down, and a lot of times the real estate field is not for the faint of heart if you don't have any other income coming in. But if you can, it's kind of like, I guess, riding the stock market, which I'm really not educated or versed in. But over the long haul, if you're going to be consistent with it and stick to it, things happen.
And I think that's a very critical thing to have everybody understand, is you've got to be consistent. And I'll just throw a little piece in here. Of course, you were going for the Olympics on swimming, and you also trained Navy SEALs for a number of years, I think since '94. And every time, if I wanted to get meet with you on something, and it was around noon, you'd always say to me, no, that's my swim time. I'm not breaking that. And so for a number of years then, I locked in with you a certain day that I would swim, and every day, unless there's a major crisis, I am at that pool with you doing that swim for that day. And the point is that if you make it your goal to make something happen, like you said, you gotta be there throwing your line in that water, trying to catch what you can. And like you said also, there was a 6-month period where nothing happened, and people that do not have faith in their abilities or give up too quickly, let go of opportunities that'll come down the line. You just got to be persistent. And if you're persistent, you succeed, which then means, as we go on here, we then had another situation that came up, and as we were doing our trustee sales, tell them a little bit about how we came across the Corona land deal and how that developed out.
Well, first, let me go back to your comment about, setting aside an hour a day for planning or, sharpening the saw. You said, I swim at noon and do these kind of things. You can underwork and you can overwork. And there has to be a balance. And balance in my life has been always a challenge to find. But if you don't carve out time for yourself, for self-improvement, for study, for exercise, you're never going to be in that groove. And you do need to be disciplined about it. And so over the years, I have told my partners, my wife, my family, hey, I'm going to take the lunch hour to go get my workout in, not only because I need the break, but it's something I want to keep up with. And it's actually part of my supplemental job, which is doing tactical swim training with the military. So, and I think that has helped keep me sane over the years. And I think that that's very important to be healthy. One of my heroes that I look up to in the olden days, one who knew how to march his troops faster than anyone else at the period, was Confederate General Stonewall Jackson. And there were many commanders on both sides of the Mason-Dixon line who would march their troops, and they never could figure out how in the world does General Jackson get his troops to march so fast. And what he did, he was in a rhythm. He would march them 50 minutes and then a 10-minute break, and 50 minutes and a 10-minute break. And so for him, that worked. And his soldiers knew that they could work hard for 50 minutes, they would get that 10-minute break. And they would outmarch everybody, even the ones who just marched through the night. And I think the reason is the ones who just constantly marched, there was just no goal. It was just on and on and on. And so we need to have those carrots for ourselves. We go on cycles, and that's why I think whether you're a religious person or not, taking a break, every so often during the week, one day to rest, or even in your work day to have time to think. Because, Mike and I, over the years, we would get so busy we wouldn't have time to think. And if your head is really down in the sand and immersed in what you're doing, you could be losing a lot of opportunity. And let me give you an example for that. Okay, this is an example that my wife reminds me of constantly. I told you I was a hunter. So one day I was out bow hunting with my wife. This was before we had kids. And my goal was to get to this knoll of a hill, to be able to look and see over the valley, to just look and see for deer. So my head was down and I was walking. And my wife, we were walking fast and we were probably 20 minutes into this hike, and she's like, well, what kind of deer are you looking for? And I looked and I looked at her like she was crazy. I said, what do you mean what kind? I'm looking for any deer. She says, well, what about that one right over there? My head was down. I was focused on the path and reaching my goal to get on that knoll to find the deer. But what was I doing? On the journey itself, there was it was almost a herd. It was like 5 or 6 deer within 20 feet off the trail to my left. And that can happen in business, in our lives, in raising our children, and in our relationships with our partners, our wives, that we are so focused on accomplishing something here that we think is going to get us to the end of where we need to go, but we forget about the end because what our actual goal is. And so you need time to sharpen the saw, and you need to have your head up and looking around and take time to look around during the journey.
Hold on, Jeff. It looks like we got another commercial break. That's a great story. Let us go to our commercial break, and we'll be back in a minute.
Voice America Business Network, the bottom line in business.
At Intuitive Strategies, LLC, we provide services to our clients that help them develop a strong education in business. And we also help them to develop a strategy that will allow them to turn their skills into a profit, protect their business and personal assets, and plan for a successful retirement. Our consulting and structuring services include business analysis, budget analysis, management analysis, ability to raise capital from investors, tax planning to minimize tax liability under code, as well as legal structure to protect business from frivolous lawsuits. Intuitive Strategies also provides document preparation services, such as business structuring documents, documents that establish an entity, management agreements, retirement plans, estate planning, wills, and trusts. Let Intuitive Strategies help you with your business. Visit intuitivestartup.com or call us in Tucson at 520-425-8759. Visit intuitivestartup.com today.
From the boardroom to you, Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to Strategies for Financial Survival with your host, Michael Figueroa. If you have a question or comment about the program, please send us an email to support@intuitivestartup.com. That's support@intuitivestartup.com. Now, back to Strategies for Financial Survival.
Welcome back, everyone. So Jeff was mentioning the need to have time to think and look at the big picture. And one thing I'm going to mention that Jeff can comment on is I remember that Jeff was always very busy going through a lot of the work that had to be done. And I had learned at a point in time when I worked under another guy who was a substantial real estate entrepreneur, dealing in millions of dollars. He used to say in his southern drawl, "Mike, you need to spend time thinking about what you're doing instead of doing." And I remember that very distinctly because then I started saying to you, we need to go to these different seminars and meet other people. And I remember we met a lot of others that are out there, and they have ideas, they have different perspectives about things, and it takes you out of the village and into the city in a way. And for me, it was very, very educational and gave me new ideas how to approach things that I may not know about when I'm in the village. What did it do for you? How did you consider that?
Well, you're right. Mike, you had to force me to take breaks because I just wanted to keep chopping the tree. And you would say, hey, we got to stop and sharpen the axe. And that was the Stonewall Jackson analogy we just used. That, you can chop and chop and chop the trees all day long, but if your axe gets dull, you can work very hard and accomplish very little. So you've got, my suggestion would be, and everybody's different about the work rest load they need, depending on health and age and this, that, and the other. But there is a cadence or a period that everybody needs time to work and time to think and resharpen the saw. But there's also those, Mike, quite frankly, that spend too much time sharpening the saw, that are too afraid to get out of their box, that think they have to know everything. And I've got two quick stories on that. One of my trips back east when I do my Navy training, I came home after a long, hard day, and it was late, and I just laid into bed, exhausted, and I turned on the TV, and I was flipping through channels. And this channel came up, and this university, I forget which was interviewing this guy, and his hair was all whacked out, and he just kind of looked very strange. And I started listening to this guy, but obviously he was somebody important, or at least it seemed to be, because he had a big audience, and everybody seemed excited to be hearing what he said. And as I was listening to what he said, I was like, man, this guy's a wacko. And I thought he was way out there, but I started listening more and more because other people were listening to him. And then the thing he said, and this is what caught me, because I'm in the middle of trying to write a book, and I have spent years going through an outline and trying to plan it and prepare it, and it's kind of like starting a business. Writing a book is kind of doing that, and I know the material. I just haven't organized it into the way I wanted to do it. And this person happened to be a famous writer, and I'll tell you who he is in a minute, but I didn't know this when I was sitting there. And so before I found out who he was, he said, look, if you want to write a book, he said, just start writing, because if you want to plan the whole thing from A to Z, it's never going to happen. You're going to spend more time doing that, and you could have had the book done. And they went to a commercial break, and they said, okay, we'll be right back with Malcolm Gladwell. And, of course, Malcolm Gladwell is the very famous author who has written Blink and The Tipping Point, and he's world-renowned. And as soon as I heard, that's Malcolm Gladwell. I mean, he's one of the greatest book writers of our era. And I took that to heart. So there's two ways. You can be working all the time and not thinking, or you can be thinking and planning all the time and not doing. And so there is a point in time where you have enough mastery of the subject and you've planned enough, you've got to start doing, because you will come up with every excuse you can. It's kind of like those people, okay, I'll start my diet next week. Or we'll start, we'll start exercising on a regular schedule. You can, and that's why we talked a little bit earlier about balance. So there is a point in time where you just need to get out and start doing, and the rest will come. And I listened to Malcolm Gladwell, and in the book writing, I was definitely into, man, I've just been planning too long. And you can get burned out and feel like you're making no progress. When you get out and start doing, other ideas will come to you, and your experience will grow. And let me just say this, if we have time for me to comment on another historical story here. Something else I learned, I love to read history, and I love to read the Constitution, and particularly history of our country. And I was reading in John Adams' book. John Adams, our second president of the United States, and he was a member of the First Continental Congress, called from the colonies at the time, before we were states, First Continental Congress, after the Lexington and Concord shots were fired. And they called everybody together to decide, hey, what are we going to do? So that First Continental Congress, he was sitting there, and Adams saw all these famous people, Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton. Oh, my gosh, he was intimidated. Because George Mason, these people are smart people. And what in the world am I doing here? And what could I add that, they don't know? And as he started to listen to them speaking, he's like, well, I know that. Well, I wrote that in my book. I know more. I know that. So the point is don't be intimidated. I mean, look at what some of our politicians are preaching. Obviously these guys aren't the end all be all. If you're feeling intimidated at getting out there and doing something, don't be. Everybody has something to add. And when John Adams realized that, he became who he was supposed to become, because he got up and started speaking and started becoming a power and a force within that Continental Congress. And more importantly, he was the power and force and spokesman behind that. Really, that next summer in 1776 was the one who, played more of a role than Thomas Jefferson in getting the colonies to declare independence and become states. Get out. You have something to say. Even if you are not the master of all subjects, you have something to say and teach. So we have things to learn, we have things to teach, and we have a balance between doing and learning. So that's kind of what I wanted to get out.
I wanted to also let everybody know that Jeff also has a radio show that he talks about the American Constitution, history, and it's a fascinating station or presentation. Jeff, tell people a little bit about how they can plug into that and when you do it.
Well, our next one is going to be tomorrow on 104.1 FM in Tucson. It's 104.1 The Truth. And we're going to be talking about the Constitution, which I think is really important for all of us to become educated on these days, and the proper role of government, and us as citizens, what our rights and duties are, and just kind of getting back to the basics a little bit. But the basics are not necessarily basics. We kind of yawn and hem-haw and roll our eyes sometimes when we think of the basic civic course. But the founders were not basic civic course guys. I mean, these guys studied people from Cicero and Plato and Aristotle up through Hume and Montesquieu and on and on. So it's just fascinating stuff. I really get excited about teaching it and learning it. I study that every day. You know, that's something I do. I get up early and do that, and it kind of gets my fires burning early in the morning. So,
well, I know it'll be fascinating. So this is your course or your radio show is every, again, would you repeat that again? Every what day, at what time, at what station?
It's not every Thursday, but tomorrow I'm a guest on the James T. Harris Show at 4 o'clock on 104.1 The Truth, and I'll be on there talking about the Constitution. And then the regular show we are working on having every Sunday. And that will be playing Sunday afternoons between 1 and 4 on 104.1 The Truth here in Tucson. So that's still to be arranged, the exact time of that. But good fun. But, you know, having that yearning to learn, you know, no matter how old we are, Mike, I think is the point, that, you know, not all of our passions are going to be the Constitution or child rearing, or my wife's really into learning about strokes because she's a stroke nurse. But to have that skill or something that we're really good at, I think really builds confidence. You know, last night I took the family to go see the Nutcracker. And, you know, and some people are into ballet and some people aren't. But, you know, what's so impressive is to see, you know, people excel at what they do. You know, it's just beautiful. Whether you're seeing somebody who masters the violin or masters gymnastics or, you know, the art of singing or or ballet or dance, it's just a beautiful thing. And so if you can find that passion in real estate, you know, it's an art. It's a beauty, and to be able to study that and understand the intricacies. And that's something that you have taught me over the years, Mike. You know, even that first deal we did, and I didn't even know what a second or third deed of trust was or how the trustee sales worked, and that if you bought the second and third, that you'd have a right to reinstate the first if you wanted to, and then start your own foreclosure, or let it go to sale and you could get paid off if people bid it up. You know, the more you learn about particular subjects, the more powerful you become within that subject. And powerful meaning that you know more than other people. And if you know more than other people, what can that equate to? It basically equates to you being able to earn more money. You agree with that?
I absolutely do. And I want to mention something that you mentioned, talked about a little earlier, but looks like we got our last break here, and then we'll have our last 15 minutes. So I'm going to let it go to break and come back to finish off some of that, and then we'll go into money raising a little bit. Thank you, and we'll talk to you in a minute.
Whether the market's up or down, or if you're looking to improve your portfolio, our experts are ready to talk to you. Call now. Toll free, 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Voice America Business Network. At Intuitive Strategies, LLC, we provide services to our clients that help them develop a strong education in business, and we also help them to develop a strategy that will allow them to turn their skills into a profit, protect their business and personal assets, and plan for a successful retirement. Our consulting and structuring services include business analysis, budget analysis, management analysis, ability to raise capital from investors, tax planning to minimize tax liability under code, as well as legal structure to protect business from frivolous lawsuits. Intuitive Strategies also provides document preparation services, such as business structuring documents, documents that establish an entity, management agreements, retirement plans, estate planning, wills, and trusts. Let Intuitive Strategies help you with your business. Visit intuitivestartup.com or call us in Tucson at 520-425-8759. Visit intuitivestartup.com today. Up-to-date business and financial news. Call now and get the financial information you need. 866-472-5790. 866-472-5790. The experts are here. Voice America Business Network. You are listening to Strategies for Financial Survival with your host, Michael Figueroa. If you have a question or comment about the program, please send us an email to support@intuitivestartup.com. That's support@intuitivestartup.com. Now, back to Strategies for Financial Survival.
Welcome back, everyone. So Jeff was talking about certain issues on how you become an expert in an area by basically putting one foot in front at a time. And I got to mention, of course, I do a lot of asset protection planning with different attorneys here in town as part of my business. And I remember from the different seminars that I had gone to, and I sit in court and I listen to arguments between different attorneys on an issue. And again, my area that I look at is situations when people are getting sued on guarantees or credit card stuff. And I remember going to these seminars, and these seminars are for attorneys only, pretty much. They're not for the public because they get very technical. And there were a number of them where they would talk about some detailed new case law that came down and the impact it had. And I said, I know that. I read that case. I know that one. I read that case. And pretty much I get every so often different attorneys call me and they say, I'm thinking of doing this. Are there any new cases that are out there that would be a problem for me? And so it's kind of nice I'm able to give advice on that, because if you're out there and really dealing with it every day, you can pretty much become an expert at it. And that worked out really well. So let me get back to some of the things that Jeff talked about. And one thing I'd like to mention to him is this. As I started to teach Jeff how to do trustee sales and tell them a little bit about how that came about, and you still do that now, and you become probably, I got to say, one of the three probably best guys in the field now in trustee sales, knowing how this all works. And I also want to mention that when we were doing this, I established a pretty large group of investors that were lending money and buying properties and doing business with me. And there came a point that we found a project that was basically a foreclosure. And Jeff talk about that and how what I did in light of what we're talking about. I wrote this plan and I kept polishing this over and over. And Jeff finally said, let's get this thing out there, or I can stop polishing. So it happened, and we raised just about $10 million out of that, and it moved forward. So that worked out really well. So Jeffrey, go ahead and explain what happened as far as the trustee sales, becoming an expert in that, and then the Corona project.
Yeah, and you were coming in and out on my end here a little bit, Mike, but what I will comment is, starting small steps, and you never know where those small steps may lead. I mean, look at the guys who started Facebook. They had no idea where their idea would lead, but they started in small steps. And we started small. And we started buying up small mom and pop houses at trustee sale over the years. And who knows where that was going to lead. But if you are interested in trustee sales, it's really would be important, in my opinion, wherever you are in the country, to try to find somebody to help you to avoid the potholes that you could encounter along the way. And let me give you a few of those. One is title work. I mean, just because a trustee sale is going to sale does not mean that you are buying the house. You could be buying a junior lien on the house subject to a first lien. It doesn't mean that the house is vacant. It doesn't mean that you're going to be able to get those people out in any timely manner, depending on your state laws, the kinds of lease they have, and so forth and so on. So there's risk involved, and it's worth educating yourself on. The other thing is sometimes it's very difficult to inspect a house you're bidding on at trustee sale, and then knowing the laws and customs of your state. So finding somebody that can help you avoid those pitfalls are very important. But get out there and start doing it. It is not rocket science. Anybody can learn how to do it, but there is a learning curve in doing it. And you can learn faster if you have somebody to kind of hold your hand at least part of the way to help you to do that. But then as you go, and if you're successful with that, other opportunities and doors will open to you, because if you're making yourself money or other investors money, then you will attract more attention and more investors. And that's what happened in our case, Mike. We started doing bigger and bigger deals. We got into apartment complexes, and then we've larger things and tracks and opportunities started coming our way, and then other people started also going to the trustee sales. Things got more competitive, and then we started looking at other ways, and one of those ways was land. Land started looking like there'd be a big opportunity in development, and we were right. Through the 2000s in Tucson, it boomed. You just want to make sure you get into a particular field when you should, and then out of it when you should. Of course, we've had a crash here since then in land, but it'll come back because the lack of building and that kind of thing. So have some foresight. Do your research. But as we started to be successful in trustee sales, other things came available. People wanted to start putting money out, having us look for bigger and better deals, and that's exactly what happened. And, of course, we put together the largest assemblage of properties in Pima County's history here by assembling about 1,550 lots in Tucson that we eventually started to develop and did some work out there through a private offering memorandum. Which Mike drafted a lot of, and then we had a securities attorney review and finish that off for us.
Yeah, that was amazing how that came about, because originally an attorney friend of mine said his client obtained about 250 lots in a bankruptcy out there and said, I'm not going to pay the taxes on this. I'm just going to walk from it. Do you want them? And so they gifted them, you might say, to me, and that was the beginning of the run on one of the biggest developments that, as you pointed out, was there. And it came from just being there and the freebie that came out.
Well, and that's something, Mike. We don't want to limit ourselves. Be open for blessings. I call it manna from heaven. If you're out there doing and you're getting deals, you're worthy of the blessings, and let them come. So if you have these opportunities, that's something that seems unreal, like that one house that we bought. It happens. Your life can change overnight. And let me give you an example of that, because again, I like history. Harry Truman is a good example of how things can change in a day. Harry Truman from Missouri was president And it's kind of interesting how he got in that position very quickly. He ran for Congress, and I don't remember the year, but he lost. And the big bosses did not want to back him again, and he thought his life was just done and over and this, that, and the other. And he really writes how depressed he was during that time. But there came a point, and I don't know what happened, but a senator retired or something happened where the party decided that Harry Truman was the one that they wanted to run for senator. And he got a call, and it's just overnight. He thought he was done, his life was over, and in a night, his life changed because the party bosses at the time said, "Hey, Harry, we want you to run for the Senate position." And at the time, just 6 months before that, they weren't going to back him for the House seat. But he was a man of character. They knew they could trust him. They knew he would do what he said he would do. And so, whether you like John McCain or not, he had a quote or a book out that character determines destiny. So if you're out there trying to do the right thing and you're not swindling anybody and you're trying to create win-wins and you're working on it, eventually the tides will turn in your favor. It may be years, it may be months, it may be days. But it was just kind of interesting how Harry Truman's life changed. And we know he became in the Senate. He became a very powerful senator with oversight, especially for fraud in World War II, and saved this country a lot of money. And because of his integrity and the hard work that he did, that's why they selected him as vice president to FDR during his fourth term run, because he was a man of integrity, and they just wanted somebody that wouldn't hurt him. And he got to that position. So just an interesting story.
Jeffer, it looks like we're coming to the end of the show. I think I'm going to have to invite you back for some other stuff because this has been a fascinating series, and yours is one of the best that I've seen. So, Jeff Utsch, we will close this session, and thank you everyone for being a listener, and we'll see you at the next show.
Thank you again for tuning in to Strategies for Financial Survival. Please join host Michael Figueroa again next Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Business Channel. Until the next show, survive and succeed.